Hi there. I'm Okwe and I'm the CEO at Kibo.
Hi everyone, my name is Leila and I'm a student success manager at Kibo and also teaching assistant for the industry experience course.
Hi, I'm Rob. I'm the head of curriculum at Kibo and was involved in the design of the course.
Hello, my name is David, and I am a professor at Kibo, and I was one of the mentors for industry experience last term.
These types of courses, industry experience preparation courses, are not very common in learning institutions. What's the why behind this course at Kibo?
So the reason we wanted to teach this course is that it's really important in everything to be prepared. Contrary to popular opinion, great careers don't happen. They are really engineered and thoughtfully planned. So we wanted our students to prepare. I remember my first job was in a consulting firm, and in consulting, it's notorious that people spend a lot of time practicing the consulting interviews. Similarly with product management, which I did before Kibo. So a lot of these excellent careers, I think it's easy to look at them and think, oh, I just show up and I interview and I get the job. But in fact, whether it's consulting or PM or software engineering, it takes a lot of work and a lot of preparation to really land those roles. So that's why we built this course. And lastly, in the African context, communication is so key. Our students aren't necessarily used to talking about themselves, their personal brand. So we also wanted to have this course so that they could learn to communicate effectively and really tell their compelling stories to potential employers.
Thanks, Ope. So like you mentioned, on top of all of this, other students need to prepare for landing the actual internship is tough. So Rob, I'm curious to know, how did you as an instructor and the entire course by extension help prepare students for this reality?
Thanks, Leila. I think it's tough landing an internship as any student, but for first year computer science students trying to land a remote internship, especially from the African continent, it's especially tough. And so it takes a lot. And I think a lot of what this course was about was trying to set students up to succeed in that process. So we had a lot of different components of the course that were trying to focus on some of the logistics. So resume review, interview prep, what does an application to an internship look like? What does it take to find a good match? Because I think finding the internships to apply to is often a confusing part of the internship process. And then we did a lot of just requiring students to apply and track their applications to a bunch of internships. So a lot of it is about helping students understand what to expect. I don't think any student really realizes it's going to be quite as much work as it actually is, especially if they haven't tried to do it before. But especially for helping them get that sense for what the job market is like and what it really takes to interview, to apply, to actually land a position. A lot of this course was designed to help them get that sort of dose of reality and then actually get internships.
And so Leila, you were a teaching assistant for the preparation part of the course. So you got to see students go through the material. Can you talk about how students interacted with the course material? Were there any surprises or shockers?
Yeah, it was very interesting actually, interacting with the students as they were going through the course content. In the beginning, it was a bit evident that they kind of underestimated how helpful this course was going to be and what they needed to do. And it became very apparent, especially when we started giving feedback on their resumes, their LinkedIn, when they started getting feedback from their mock interviews, that there's a lot that needed to get done, and they became a bit more awoken to that reality. So it was interesting to see that mindset shift. And I also had the privilege of working with the wonderful volunteers who gave up their time to support our students in preparing them for the interview process. So it was also really affirming to see how willing they were to share their expertise give of their time and just contribute to make this journey less strenuous for our students. So Rob, I'm curious to know what were your expectations of the students as they went through this course, and how do they do against those expectations?
The goal was for students to submit strong applications to well-matched companies. So that's like the outcome that we're looking for. We also want students to learn a lot from the experience about how do you actually go and apply to jobs. What does a good resume look like? How do you do in interviews? A lot of that like self-knowledge and self-confidence about like, oh, this is what an interview feels like to be in. A lot of those were sort of part of the learning goals for the course. So I'd say students did pretty well. I think that there were some students did better than others in like actually submitting all of their applications and making sure their resume was super strong and actually finding an internship. Finding an internship is really tough. And so I think, we have a lot to learn and students still have a lot to learn about actually landing internships. But I think every student took away a lot of learnings about what it takes to actually succeed in that application process. I think the interviews in particular were a real eye-opener for just like, how do you actually carry yourself? How do you talk technically? How do you communicate clearly in an interview setting? How do you personally respond to stress? So students learned a lot about sort of that situation, and I'm hopeful that that's going to carry forward into their other courses in year 2 and 3, so that they know, okay, this is what I have to achieve, this is who I have to become in the rest of my courses, so that the next time I'm in these situations, I feel even more confident and prepared.
Thanks, Rob. You mentioned that a lot went into the design of this course and how it was structured. So, Ope, I'm curious, how has your experience as a senior professional in this industry working with many junior professionals shaped the design of this course?
I have, had the opportunity to hire and interview a lot of people, in probably hundreds of people over the last decade or so. I've also gotten to mentor a lot of people. So as we were designing the course, what I really wanted to do was give our students some of the mindsets that I think is key to long-term job success, and then also ensure that they don't do some of the things I see people do that take them out of the game immediately. So in terms of the mindset, the reality is that your career is very long. It's not about the internship or the job you're trying to get right now. So a lot of the design for the course was getting them used to that practice. Layla was saying earlier that when people started doing practice interviews, they were shocked by how far they had to go. So the course was intentionally designed to include a lot of practice. Because over time, that's what it will take to tell your story constantly, to continue refining it, etc. So that was one. The second thing was really helping them refine their written communication. So, most of the time when I hire, the first thing I'm going to do is maybe read your application or a cover letter or a resume, and 90% of people blow it at that step, right? It's like I read it for a minute and then I never go back. So how do we ensure our students' resumes aren't doing that? The things that they're writing aren't doing that. You're not writing 10 paragraph long emails to ask somebody for an informational interviews, just things that like you wouldn't know. It's like when I was starting, I didn't know these things. To some extent, you had to either discover them or have somebody model them for you. So that was the other key part of the design, is like understanding really well from hiring and seeing young people starting their careers what some of those red flags are, and helping our students know what they are and not do those things right at the beginning.
Thanks for sharing that, Ope. And while I still have you, I'm curious, like a lot of our learning here at Kibo focuses on bringing learners as close to the workspace as possible. Can you share why this philosophy is so important to us here at Kibo?
I think it's important for learning to be relevant. As much as possible, we want students doing things that don't just apply to the classroom, but they apply to the real world. So, doing a lot of projects, for example, or having students write blog posts or teach, just getting out of the classroom is really key, because fundamentally students come to Kibo to launch great careers. And again, you don't want to start launching your career at the end of graduation. You should really start on day one. So that's why we do that. And then the other reality is that no matter how amazing our faculty and curriculum are, and they really are amazing, they're never going to be enough, right? Like, you only, because there's certain things you will only learn when you are in the real world, like interpersonal things. You're only going to learn that in the real world. Technology is changing rapidly, so it's really important to us that students be prepared, and then they see the so what of what they're learning, right? It's like, now you understand why David and Rob were making you do all that stuff in programming classes, because you're having to build it in an open source project. So that's why we do it.
David, as someone who's heavily involved in structuring the learning experience here at Kibo, we've talked a lot about how Kibo has a philosophy of bringing students as close to the workplace as possible, how we've structured this whole preparation for industry experience. So how exactly does this translate to the what and the how in terms of what the students learn at Kibo?
We try to put a lot of thought into the work that students are going to be completing in the classroom in order to ensure that they're aligned with things that they'll be doing in the real world. This includes doing project-based learning, where students are interacting with each other and having to communicate about what they're completing and how they're going about it. This includes doing projects that are of a more significant scale and that have a real-world application, rather than small toy examples where students aren't going to get a completely realistic idea of like what they'll actually be doing once they go into industry. It's also very important for students to adopt really strong behaviors that will allow them to continue to grow in the industry as it changes, particularly in this field where it changes so rapidly. And so, we work hard to encourage our students to have a strong growth mindset, to adopt the mentality of always be learning, to be adaptable in how they're approaching problems and the spaces that they're working in. Those are a couple of the examples of how this translates to the things that we're doing in our curriculum.
That's wonderful to hear. So there's a lot that has been shared about what the students currently learn and how they engage in the classroom. I'm curious, Rob, if all this is already happening in the classroom, why did we feel the need to have this specific course, industry experience prep? What else was being taught there, or what was being re-emphasized that the students needed to take a specific course?
I think that that's a really good question. So I think of it as sort of two things. We've got all of these courses that give you the lines on the resume. They give you the projects that you've done. They give you the skills that you're actually going to use on the job. And then this industry experience course is a bridge between those skills and those projects that you've completed and the actual job. In that application part, even if you have the skills, if you're not presenting yourself well, if you're not interviewing well, if your resume doesn't show the projects in a way that some reviewer of the application is actually going to be able to appreciate, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you would do great on the job if you can't get the job. So this course was about that other set of skills. It can't make up the bulk of the curriculum because most of the time you're actually in the job, but there is this key point where you're actually applying and interviewing. And so this course was about that set of skills and preparing students to actually go. And then just like in our other courses where we have that like contact with reality, we had students actually go and do it and actually go and submit their resumes, not just write it, and then get feedback from the real world.
So David, you had, I'd love to hazard and say, the privilege of mentoring some students who contributed to open source projects as part of their industry experience. So I'm curious, what were your observations on some of the key strengths and even some weaknesses that you noticed with Kibo students?
I completely agree that it was a privilege to be able to mentor the students during their internship experience. It was a lot of fun for me to be able to interact with them and learn a little bit more about their dreams and motivations, and see the growth that they had during the industry experience, and come out of that experience knowing that they gained a lot from it and ultimately will benefit them in their careers. As with the real world, everyone in the team brings their own strengths and weaknesses, but there are a couple of threads that I think stand out across the teams. One is, the students who just completed their first year of a computer science curriculum, which is quite early in their learning experience. And I was impressed by the breadth of the knowledge that the students had in, programming, in web development frameworks, in tooling that they used and were capable of using. I would say that wasn't super common in my past experience with students that were coming out of other programs. Also, the students were super adaptable. They have to work. They're online. It was a virtual internship experience, so they're working from home much of the time, and so and then different time zones than the rest of the open source project. And so there's a lot of the kind of basic challenges that they have to overcome to be able to engage with the internship. And I was impressed by how adaptable they were in being able to do that, and how they were able to come up with strategies to be as efficient as possible. The other element is, many of the students were able to demonstrate great time management. They were balancing the internship with potentially other responsibilities at home, and other personal commitments. And for a good portion of the students, they were able to navigate that very well, which was impressive. In terms of experience, like I say, they were in their first year of students, and while we work to engage that they're going to have significant projects that they're going to work on, like coming into an open source project where there's potentially tens of thousands of lines of code or hundreds of thousands of lines of code. It's a whole different scale that students just probably have not experienced before. So I think there was definitely a little bit of a learning, a little bit of an exposure that was very valuable to see, like, oh, when I work in real code, like I'm not going to understand every line of the code that's in the project, right? And I need to figure out how to navigate through that code base to figure out where I need to work, where I need to focus my attention to solve the particular issue that I'm working to solve. So that was definitely a learning experience for the students. And then also, one of the areas that students, I'm sure grew in was learning about the process of creating production level code. It's not just about writing code, it's also about testing the code thoroughly, adopting the norms and the standards of the project when it comes to writing the test cases, unit tests or integration tests, as well as creating documentation, both within the code and supporting documentation so that other developers in the community and other users of the software are able to use the features that students were contributing to. So I think those were all things that were growth opportunities for the students this summer.
The learning experience wasn't just for the students. This was the first iteration for us here at Kibo of the Industry Experience Prep course. So Ope, I'm curious, what did you learn during this experience about the things that maybe you would want to change or improve in the future?
So this was the first iteration of the class, and we learned a lot. We really believe in the growth mindset and learning continuously, and that includes our own curriculum design. So there are many areas that we want to iterate on. The first thing that we'll do differently next time is have more time. So the first time we had about 3 months for the preparation experience. We're going to be extending that across 2 terms. So it'll be about 5 to 6 months. And the main reason for this is our students encounter so many new things. It takes a while to get in the groove, and it takes a while to build confidence. And this first time, it felt as if by the time students really built that confidence in interviewing and telling their story, it was already at the very end. So we're hoping that having more time enables them to build that confidence sooner. I also think having more time will give us a bit more opportunity to focus on why. Our students are earning a degree in computer science, and there's so many career paths that might take you on, from software engineering to product to design to entrepreneurship. So we're hoping to build in a little bit more time for students to reflect on their own goals and perhaps target their industry experience towards those goals. And then there's always a lot of small things, curriculum materials to change. Layla, you worked on helping to coordinate the interviews with our mentors, and that was quite strenuous. So, improving some of our processes to make things a little bit easier. But I'm really excited for the next iteration of the course for our second cohort of students. I think it's going to be even stronger and allow them to make even better contributions.